Warehouses can be dangerous places to work. It's important to understand warehouse hazards because they can lead to serious injury or even death. The key thing to remember, however, is that most injuries and fatalities can be prevented. Let's identify some potential hazards that could be found in your facility. Storage and racking systems are integral to keeping your facility organized, but they could collapse if they're improperly installed or damaged. Hazards associated with racking include partial or total failure, which is basically a collapse of the racking system, displaced material or damage due to lift trucks colliding with the racking, materials falling from racks when improperly stored, poor layout that can be a risk to staff. Loading docks can be dangerous. We just have to look at stats from the Workplace Safety and Insurance Board to see that shipping and receiving areas can expose workers to multiple high-risk hazards. Over the last 10 years, workers have suffered serious injuries or fatality from being pinned between a lift truck and loading dock, pinned between a loading dock and a trailer, struck by or run over by a truck, struck by falling items that weren't secured, and worst of all, workers have been seriously hurt or even killed due to premature removal of trailers. Workers in shipping and receiving areas can also be exposed to hazards involving external trucking firms that deliver and carry loads. See the loading dock video in this series to learn more about these hazards and how you can prevent injuries. Let's not forget slips, trips, and falls. These injuries continue to be an issue in most Ontario workplaces. According to WSIB, almost 20% of all lost time injury claims are caused by slips, trips, and falls. In a warehouse, these injuries can be caused by things like slippery surfaces, possibly because of oil or grease, seasonal trip hazards like snow and ice, improper ladder use, changes in walkway levels and slopes, unsecured mats, debris and items stored in pedestrian walkways, and falls from working at heights. Material handling is also a real problem for warehouse workers. Injuries caused by lifting or moving items account for almost 40% of WSIB claims. They're caused by things like overexertion from working with awkward postures or lifting techniques. But that's not all. Warehouses have many additional unique and sometimes ever-changing business activities that could increase risk of injury. Things like hazards from power tools used during crating and packaging, unique equipment hazards from shrink wrap machines, compactors, conveyors, and carousel storage devices, contractors doing a variety of tasks on site, or a sudden chemical exposure caused by broken containers, substandard equipment, or repairs being done within the facility. Appropriate training is the key to ensuring your workers understand hazards they face and what they're expected to do to remain safe. Supervisors should be familiar with the unique health and safety concerns faced by warehouse workers. And most importantly, employees should always be encouraged to ask questions and report all safety concerns. Tune in to the full warehouse video series, where we examine some of these hazards and provide tips for controlling them in your own facility. I'm Jennifer McFarlane. This has been your health and safety tip from Workplace Safety and Prevention Services. For more
Have you ever thought what it would be like to drive with a totally obstructed view while navigating around obstacles and pedestrians? Probably not. But in a warehouse and distribution center, it happens pretty much every day. The mast of the truck and the load of the forks create a real visibility issue for lift truck drivers, which could lead to drastic consequences. But let's face it, many workplaces rely on lift trucks and mobile equipment to keep their business moving. This means pedestrian safety is a daily major concern. A number of factors contribute to pedestrians getting struck by powered equipment. Here are just a few things you should look for when assessing your risks. Are lift truck loads too high, or is the load in the air while the truck is being operated? Both situations add to the already obstructed view that the driver is dealing with. Assuming designated pathways exist, are pedestrians commonly seen walking freely throughout the warehouse instead of using the pedestrian walkways? Are pallet loads stacked in the warehouse at ends of rows, causing blind corners for both the lift truck operator and unsuspecting pedestrians? Powered lift trucks that are battery operated are often undetected until it's too late. Is your lift truck operator fatigued or distracted? It's not just the physical hazards that pose a concern. A driver may be mentally distracted by life in general. For instance, being tired, not feeling well, thinking about a personal problem or some other issues can take the driver's focus from the task at hand. As an employer, you can control these risks by implementing and consistently enforcing safe work practices to manage traffic flow. And it's really important to train both the drivers and the pedestrians. Don't allow your lift truck operator to drive with their loads in the air. And if a high load obstructed the view, make it a policy that another worker be there to provide direction. Pedestrians shouldn't walk in your facility where lift trucks are moving about freely. Does your facility have pedestrian pathways? If so, do you enforce their use? Do your employees wear high visibility vests? Do pedestrians and lift trucks come together on occasion? If so, extreme caution must be taken, including making eye contact before proceeding. All of these elements should be included in your training. Most importantly, you would be wise to remove blind spots at the end of rows by lowering pallet loads. Or even better, choosing not to store loads on the floor if there is adequate space on your racking. Also make sure your workers understand that if in a crouched position near where the mobile equipment is being used, they too could be in a blind spot. And don't just think about the workers who are in the warehouse on a daily basis. Think about employees from other departments who come rushing down for some reason or another and don't pay attention to raised loads, blind corners, and rear end swing. That's when pedestrian walkways are your best option. Remember, forklifts are not bolted down to the floor like other production equipment. They can be anywhere at any time. And a lift truck driver is essentially driving around with a large box sitting on the dashboard obstructing the view. Strong safety practices to manage traffic flow will ensure everyone in your facility is safe and your business keeps moving. I'm Chuck Leon, and this has been your health and safety tip from Workplace Safety and Prevention Services. I'd like to share with you something that happened to me. I was driving a lift truck and unloading a trailer at a dock when the worst thing imaginable happened. The tractor and the trailer left the dock unexpectedly, causing me and my lift truck to drive right off the edge. Fortunately, I did something right that day. I fastened my seatbelt when I got into the lift truck. That one simple action saved my life. It kept my body within the steel frame of the lift truck when I drove off the edge of the dock. So what's the lesson here? Well, actually there are many lessons. First of all, don't leave your safety in the hands of someone else. Take charge. The person who has the most to lose working at the loading dock needs to take steps to ensure the tractor and the trailer do not leave the dock prematurely. How can this be done? Well, first, let's talk about wheel chocks. Wheel chocks are triangular wedge-shaped objects, usually made of hard rubber. They get inserted in front of the trailer's rear wheels to prevent the trailer from moving during loading and unloading. But you can't rely solely on wheel chocks to prevent a trailer from moving because they sometimes fail. On slippery pavement, wheel chocks can slide when the truck attempts to move, rendering them useless. Or the lift truck moving in and out of the trailer can cause trailer creep. This is basically short movements that pull the trailer away from the loading dock. Trailer creep can occur even when the chocks are in place, creating a gap between the trailer and the dock. We recommend wheel chocks be used as a support to other vehicle restraint solutions, such as mechanical restraint systems. This is a mechanical device that is permanently installed at the outside of the loading dock and consists of a hook that connects to the trailer's ICC bar, the lower metal bar at the back end of the trailer. This device will keep the trailer locked in place if the driver tries to leave prematurely. Signal lights situated both inside and outside of the loading dock usually support the mechanical restraint system. When the light is red on the outside, it flashes green on the inside of the loading dock. This is a signal to the truck driver that the dock lock is engaged. And to the forklift operator, this is a signal that it is safe to enter the trailer. When the outside light flashes green, the driver knows it is safe to check in with the office before departing. A more cost-effective option involves disconnecting what is called the glad hand, or the air hose between the tractor and the trailer. In this situation, a glad hand lock prevents the hoses from being connected for a time. This process releases air from the trailer brakes, essentially locking them to minimize the chance that the tractor will pull the trailer away prematurely. One last solution involves the driver of the tractor giving the keys to the warehouse worker who is loading or unloading the trailer. When this process has been completed, the keys are returned so the driver can leave the dock. There are two other essential points to keep in mind when loading and unloading a trailer. Inspect the inside of the trailer to ensure the floor is not damaged and the capacity of the trailer will support the weight of the load, the lift truck, and the operator. Secure trailers that are detached from the tractor with a support jack at the front end before the lift truck enters. This prevents the trailer from tipping upwards when the load is removed from the front of the trailer. This is especially important for smaller pup and reefer trailers. Don't let what happened to me happen in your workplace. Remember, the person with the most to lose if safe practices are not followed is the worker who loads or unloads the truck. Encourage your lift truck drivers to take safety into their own hands. I'm Chuck Leon, and this has been your health and safety tip.
A warehouse can't function without steel storage racks, and it's rare to hear of situations where an entire racking structure collapses. However, when it does happen, it can be catastrophic. When racking collapses, everyone, including the Ministry of Labor, asks one important question: why did it happen? There are many reasons for a racking collapse. This video focuses in on two of the most common causes. The racking structure isn't properly installed, and the racking is damaged and doesn't get reported and repaired quickly. Both of these situations could cause structural deficiencies in the racking. If struck by a lift truck, this can cause the whole system to collapse. It's really important to know that every piece of a racking structure, from a small pin to a major beam that supports the load, must be installed according to manufacturer's recommendations. Otherwise, the integrity of the structure could be compromised, and a compromised structure is a disaster waiting to happen. So make sure these essential components of the racking structure are in place, properly installed and free from damage to ensure its load worthiness. The column or post that supports the upright beam must be straight and free of any significant damage. The anchors that attach the post to the floor slab should be properly tightened to the minimum recommended torque to resist impact forces. The beam shouldn't be used if it's bent. It could be a sign that its structural integrity has been compromised. The braces, whether horizontal or diagonal, that connect to the posts must be in good condition as they support the structure if there's impact. Column or post guards, which are typically located at the end of an aisle, must be secured in front of the rack to ensure the guard can absorb the impact of a lift truck. Even a little safety pin that makes a connection between the beam and the post is essential to prevent accidental movement of a beam when a lift truck moves its load. There are steps you can take to ensure the safety of your employees that work around racking structures. Make sure your racking is installed according to manufacturer specifications by a trained professional. Encourage your employees to report damage immediately if the racking is struck by a lift truck so that necessary steps can be taken. It may mean unloading the rack and getting the damaged pieces replaced immediately, but this should be done to prevent a possible issue later. Inspect your racking regularly and ensure your in-house inspectors are trained on what to look for and how to tell the difference between unsafe immediate danger or minor damage. When a major incident such as racking collapse happens, it's often due to what we call safety complacency. What exactly does that mean? Well, although it could happen, it's rare for a rack structure to collapse if struck one time by a lift truck. More often, complete rack collapse happens when management doesn't make necessary repairs in a timely manner. Then employees get used to seeing damage, thinking there's no risk. Finally, after the racking gets repeatedly battered over time, the rack structure could fail. Don't let this happen to you. Make sure your steel racking is installed properly and always maintained. The safety of your workers depends on it. I'm Norm Kramer, and this has been your Health and Safety. Most people know what a pallet is. You just have to walk into a large retailer that sells home renovation supplies and you'll see lots of pallets stored on racking structures. A pallet is essentially a platform that's used as a base for storing and transporting loads. Pallets come in different sizes and are made from a variety of materials such as wood, plastic, and even metal. Today we'll focus on wood pallets simply because it's the most common type currently used. We don't always think of a pallet as being a safety hazard, but when a damaged or misplaced one falls from racking, it can cause serious injury to unsuspecting pedestrians walking nearby. Injuries from pallets can be caused by a number of issues. Here are a few examples. Using a pallet that isn't designed to carry the weight of the load placed on it. The likely result is a pallet gets crushed and the load falls. Using a pallet that is damaged. In all likelihood, the pallet will collapse under the weight of the load placed on it. Using the wrong size pallet for the racking structure. If the pallet is too small for the size of the rack, it could fall off. Handling pallets in an unsafe manner. For instance, entering pallets with the forks of a lift truck on an angle can cause damage to a pallet and undermine its integrity. So what can you do in your workplace to ensure your pallet doesn't become a liability? Know the safe load capacity of your pallet and keep your load within this designated capacity. Be aware that this capacity is based on the load being evenly distributed. And if the same weight is concentrated in one area of the pallet only, the safe load capacity will be exceeded. Using a damaged pallet is a recipe for disaster. Every pallet's top and bottom should be inspected before use to determine its suitability to support the load. If you notice on any pallet that the boards or stringers, the pieces that support the boards, are missing, defective, split, or broken, the pallet should be taken out of service. It's simply not worth the risk. Also, be cautious of any pallets entering your facility that are either made from lower quality materials or are weaker in design. Loads have collapsed when these pallets are reused, especially when heavy loads are placed on them. Ensure your pallet is the right size for the spacing between your racking beams. If you have a smaller size pallet and try to store it on a racking structure designed for a larger pallet, the load could fall. Sometimes we see wire mesh decking placed on racks to support smaller pallets. Unfortunately though, wire mesh decking does not have the same weight capacity as the beams, which is what the pallet should be resting on. Don't forget about your lift truck drivers. Train your drivers on the proper way to handle your pallets. For example, the forks of the lift truck should enter the pallet straight to avoid damaging it. The fork should support the full length of the pallet and should be spaced so that the maximum support is given. Finally, when it comes to stacking your empty pallets, be sure to stack them flat as opposed to on their sides. Pallets stored on their ends tend to fall over and cause injuries to anyone that happens to be close by. A pallet is a fundamental and standard piece of equipment used in warehouses and distribution centers. In fact, thousands of pallets pass through loading docks every day in these types of facilities. Don't take your pallet for granted. Take care of your pallets and you take care of your employees. I'm Norm Kramer and this has been your health and safety tip from
Conveyor equipment is invaluable when it comes to moving products around your warehouse or distribution center. With some steel, a motor, and a few belts and rollers, a conveyor system certainly makes handling material easier. But don't let these machines fool you. A conveyor can be unforgiving if you make contact with certain parts. For example, long hair or loose clothing can get entangled and cause a worker to be pulled into the equipment. This can lead to serious injuries like broken bones, amputations, and even death. There are many types of conveyors. Belt and driven roller types are common in warehouses and distribution centers. There are elements of these machines that require safeguarding to protect workers. On a typical belt conveyor, the head and tail pulleys can be problematic. The head pulley is where the belt would return to the underside, and the tail pulley is where the belt returns to the upper or load-carrying side. The belt moving over the head or tail pulley can create an in-running nip hazard. Also, the rotation of the pulleys alone can cause entanglement if there are raised screws, bolt heads, or other edges. In some cases, the head and tail pulleys are completely enclosed by safeguarding so workers can't reach these areas. Examine your conveyors closely. You may find similar hazards at take-up or snub idlers too. The conveyor's drive system is another problem area. Whether it's driven by belts or chains, the issue is still the same. If a worker can reach the drive, there is potential for injury. As an employer, it's your responsibility to take steps to safeguard this hazard. The drive systems on conveyors typically don't require frequent access and generally come with guards. Make sure the guard encloses the drive area completely. Some systems only have covers at one side, leaving another side open to hazards. Conveyors running above workers can also be a safety issue. If there's a chance something can fall off the conveyor, like products or even parts of the conveyor itself, you should take steps to prevent this possibility. Things like netting or barriers under the conveyor or above the pathway of a worker can easily reduce the risk. Don't confuse emergency stop buttons and cables for guards. These e-stops are typically activated after something has gone wrong, like when a box is stuck and the conveyor must be stopped. When it comes to worker safety, e-stops are just not enough. Ensure there are safeguards in place to protect workers from entanglement and the in-running nip points I mentioned earlier. Make sure you practice lockout, especially when maintenance or repairs are needed. On many conveyors, this is a simple practice of locating the switch for the drive energy, moving that switch to the off position, and adding your lock. Once you've checked that the conveyor will not start, you can go ahead and make the repairs. It'll take a few extra seconds, but locking out the conveyor will go a long way when it comes to reducing risk. Don't wait for an accident to happen. Look for the conveyor hazards that could pose a risk to your workers and take steps to protect against injuries. Doing so will keep your employees safe and products moving throughout your facility. I'm Mike Wilson, and this has been your health and safety tip from Workplace Safety and Prevention Services. For more information, visit WSPS.ca.